When a little boy begged a school bus driver to let him stay on the bus overnight, the driver initially thought that the boy was just a young child looking for an adventure. However, after he noticed the boy's jumpy and scared demeanor, and sees a bruise peeking out from under the boy's sleeve, he realized that something was deeply wrong. Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories that have a strong moral message, be sure to like and subscribe for more. The final bell at Fairview Elementary had rung nearly 40 minutes earlier, yet bus 14 still idled at the southern edge of the vast parking lot, the only yellow body left among a sea of faculty sedans. Mr. Pope killed the ignition but left the battery running. Ceiling fans whispered overhead, stirring faint puffs of dust that danced in late afternoon sunlight. He loved this lull, the hush that followed a day of squeals and sneaker squeaks, but today quiet felt heavier, thick as honey. He began his walkthrough with the same methodical rhythm he used every afternoon. Check floor for forgotten lunchboxes, tug each seatbelt, peek beneath benches for missing mittens. The school board's transportation manual called it post-route inspection, but to Mr. Pope it was a ritual, an unspoken vow that every child who rode with him was accounted for, even in their absence. He was halfway down the aisle when an almost imperceptible rustle broke the silence, followed by the soft click of plastic against vinyl. He paused, heartbeat quickening. "Someone still practicing hide-and-seek?" he called, light-hearted enough to keep nerves at bay. The only answer was a drawn-out breath, shaky and muffled. Bending, Mr. Pope lifted the edge of seat 19 and saw Ryan Kramer curled in a tight knot, backpack clamped over his head as though it were armor. The boy's knuckles were paper white. Mr. Pope's first thought was of his own granddaughter playing pirates in the laundry hamper last Sunday, but this child's posture spoke not of games but of desperation. "Hey buddy, route's done," Mr. Pope said. "We've got to take the big beast back to the depot." "I can't go home," Ryan whispered, voice raw, as if each word scraped his throat. "Please. I'll be quiet. You won't even know I'm here." An icy ripple crawled down Mr. Pope's spine. He crouched to the child's level, noting details now with the precision of a crime scene photographer. The bruise ringed around the wrist, the faint swelling near the left temple, the frayed strap of an overstuffed backpack. Up close he could see fingerprint patterns lacing the discoloration. He softened his tone, instinctively dropping his volume to a register that felt safer. "We'll figure something out, champ, but first let's get you warm." He flicked the heater to high and guided Ryan to the front seat. The boy moved like a skittish deer, shoulders hitching at every creak. Mr. Pope offered his own windbreaker, draping it over thin arms that shouldn't have been shaking in mild autumn air. Then he grabbed the radio handset and called dispatch. "Need admin support at Lot 3. Minor, potentially distressed, still on board." He kept his sentences clipped, professional, but their subtext screamed urgency. As he waited, he poured lukewarm water from his thermos lid and coaxed Ryan to sip. Minutes stretched. Mr. Pope recounted safe stories. His dog's silly obsession with peanut butter, the time a kindergartner tried to pay fare with acorns. Gradually Ryan's shoulders loosened, though his eyes remained shadowed. Across town, in a narrow apartment above a florist shop, Nolan Hervey jolted awake from nightmares that returned with merciless choreography. In his dream he had again been 11, trapped in a windowless cellar where mildew stung his nostrils and footsteps overhead meant pain was descending. He sat up in the dimness, lungs clawing at air, and listened until he could separate real silence from remembered dread. A passing freight train rattled the window. The city continued unconcerned. He showered even though dawn remained hours away, letting hot water scald the echo of phantom blows. Over mismatched coffee mugs, he graded pre-algebra quizzes at the kitchen table, forcing his brain toward lines of numbers that added up cleanly, unlike memory. Somewhere in the stack was Ryan Kramer's folded test, precisely answered, meticulous handwriting. Nolan remembered praising the boy 3 days ago, watching pride spark behind shy lashes. Pride, he recalled, had been dangerous in his own childhood, feeling visible invited punishment. Telling children they had worth now felt like an act of rebellion against the past. By 7 a.m. Nolan arrived at Fairview, greeting students with practiced warmth that hid fatigue. The call from the office came mid-second period. "Mr. Hervey, please report to the nurse's station immediately." Something in the secretary's tone made him hand his lesson to Ms. Whitaker without explanation and hurry down hallways that thrummed with fluorescent light. He entered to see Ryan seated on the paper-covered cot, feet dangling. A cold pack rested against the boy's temple. Mr. Pope and Nurse Delgado flanked him. Ryan's shoulders stiffened when Nolan appeared, then eased, recognition and relief warring across his features. Nolan's heart clenched. "Ryan, you okay?" Nolan asked, kneeling. "They bumped him on the ride, probably," Greg Harlan said from the doorway, voice dripping benign amusement. "Kid's horse around." Nolan hadn't noticed the foster father arrive. Greg filled the doorframe, pressed shirt immaculate, smile a notch too wide. He stepped forward, but Ryan shrank. Nolan shifted subtly, inserting his own body between them. "The nurse is still assessing," he said. Greg's smile flickered. "Naturally. But Ryan can be dramatic, can't you, buddy?" Ryan looked at his sneakers. Nurse Delgado cleared her throat. "I'd like Ryan scheduled for a precautionary X-ray, given the swelling pattern." Greg's knuckles whitened around a car key, but he recovered with impressive speed. "We can arrange that. Melissa will take him after school," Greg replied. He reached for Ryan's shoulder. Instinctively Ryan flinched, a micro-gesture almost invisible, but not to Nolan. Ms. Langley's planned home visit that evening unfolded like a stage play where every prop gleamed too brightly. The Harlan residence in Oak Meadow Estates boasted spotless hardwood floors, scented candles, neatly aligned family portraits that looked freshly retouched. Ms. Langley had been a social worker for 15 years. She trusted what houses whispered behind their polish. Greg offered tea. Melissa insisted on pumpkin muffins. Ryan sat at the far edge of an overstuffed couch, feet not touching the floor, eyes glazed. Ms. Langley asked about bedtime routines, discipline philosophy, medical histories. Melissa waxed lyrical about organic diets and screen-free play. Greg discussed chore charts and healthy consequences. All the while Ryan remained silent, picking at an unraveling thread on his cuff. Ms. Langley watched him, saw the half-moon nail marks in his palms. She asked, "Ryan, could you show me your room?" Greg opened his mouth to protest, but she had already risen. Ryan's bedroom looked curated, a color-coordinated quilt, books arranged by height, plush frog on the pillow. Yet the closet door bore a subtle warp, as if opened and slammed repeatedly. Inside she found no clothing beyond 2 uniforms and 1 Sunday outfit. She noted the scarcity, the antiseptic scent that masked something metallic. Ryan's gaze flickered to her, pleading without words. Back in the living room she praised the home but scheduled a pediatric assessment and psychological screening. Greg's nostrils flared. Melissa bit her smile so hard Ms. Langley feared she might bleed. Days passed with the sluggish tension of a storm front refusing to break. At school Ryan attended classes but faded deeper into himself. Nolan began letting him eat lunch in the math lab, away from cafeteria chaos. They played logic games with colored tiles. Ryan's eyes came alive tracing patterns. Nolan never pressed about home life. He simply made space. One Tuesday Nolan found a scrap of paper left under a textbook. A stick figure behind bars and the words "run" soon drawn in shaky capitals. He folded it carefully, tucking it into his wallet like contraband. That night Nolan's nightmare intensified. He relived being dragged toward a woodshed, except this time Greg Harlan's face replaced his old tormentors. He woke gasping, rage and terror woven so tight he could barely breathe. At 3 a.m. he emailed Ms. Langley volunteering to document everything: dates, bruises, tardiness. He attached photos discreetly taken when Ryan rolled up sleeves for art class. Finally he wrote, "Please keep me updated. I'm ready to act." The dam broke 2 Fridays later when Ryan arrived with a limp so pronounced he couldn't climb the bus stairs. Mr. Pope lifted him, fury simmering behind his gentle smile. Hospital imaging revealed a spiral fracture, suggestive of high torsion twisting force. CPS filed emergency removal. Ryan was relocated to Redford Children's Shelter, fluorescent nights, rotating staff, beds that smelled of detergent and loneliness. He lasted 6 restless hours before slipping past a dozing attendant and vanishing into darkness. Ryan wandered streets lit by neon and rain slick. He curled beside a bakery vent, knees hugged to chest. Nolan, passing by, spotted him. He wrapped the boy in his coat, dialed Ms. Langley and carried him to the car. At the hospital, Detective Ramirez interviewed Ryan about punishments, forced ice baths, food withheld. Ryan answered in broken staccato. Nolan stayed until morning, stepping out only when required. In the hallway, Ms. Langley said, "He needs a foster placement with someone he trusts." "I'll do it," Nolan said. The word scared him. Commitment meant possibility of failing, but abandoning the boy terrified him more. Fostering required paperwork, background checks, mandatory classes. Bureaucracy crawled, yet pediatrician Dr. Adler deemed Ryan safe to leave by Wednesday. Nolan spent 48 frantic hours preparing. Borrowing a twin bed from Ms. Whitaker's basement, buying Star Wars sheets, reading guidelines on trauma-informed parenting. Ryan moved in with one duffel bag and an apologetic smile. The first night they ordered cheese pizza. Nolan discovered Ryan meticulously counted slices to ensure fairness. Nolan joked about needing math to divide pepperoni. Ryan laughed, shoulders loosening a notch. During the second week, a Saturday morning started with ambitions of homemade blueberry pancakes. Ryan volunteered to stir batter. When the whisk clattered against the bowl, a sound too reminiscent of metal striking metal, he froze. Nolan noticed the color drain from his face. "We're safe," Nolan said, taking the whisk, but Ryan bolted to the corner, crouching with arms over his head. The panic attack lasted 7 minutes. Nolan kept time because measuring offered control. He crouched nearby, narrating the present. "We smell cinnamon, we hear the refrigerator humming, we feel the cool tile under our feet." Eventually Ryan's breathing slowed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "There's nothing to be sorry for," Nolan responded. They flipped batter too soon, making lumpy cakes they devoured anyway, calling them galaxy pancakes, because the blueberry swirls looked like distant nebulas. That afternoon Ms. Whitaker visited with her Labrador, Scout. Scout nudged Ryan's hand, then flopped belly up. Ryan giggled, a sound brighter than any sunbeam. Nolan silently vowed to adopt a pet as soon as lease restrictions lifted. Mr. Pope wrestled with memories of his own childhood stutter that bus bullies exploited. Seeing Ryan confront fear stirred echoes. One evening he parked the bus and joined a public speaking club, determined to tell audiences about resilience. He later admitted to Nolan, "The kid gave me courage I never knew I lacked." Days formed a new rhythm. Mornings of school, afternoons of therapy sessions. Ryan worked with Dr. Maesuk Han, who used art-based trauma recovery. He painted ravens perched on barbed wire, then bright kites escaping gray clouds. Nolan attended sessions too, learning grounding technique. One Saturday they visited the Science Museum. In the planetarium Ryan whispered, "Do you think there are kids on other worlds wishing for a different life?" "Maybe," Nolan answered. "But maybe the universe keeps pushing until someone listens." Ryan squeezed his hand. Court proceedings advanced like clunky machinery. Pre-trial hearings, evidentiary motions, depositions. Nolan attended each, scribbling notes. Ms. Langley presented photographic timelines. The defense hammered at credibility. Greg remained in county jail, but Melissa made bail. She showed up at school twice, once lurking near the entrance, once pacing in a parked SUV. Security escorted her away, but her stare unsettled Nolan. During discovery the defense produced letters allegedly written by Ryan apologizing for lying. Handwriting experts determined they were forged. The attempt backfired. The judge allowed the letters as evidence of witness tampering. Ryan prepared to testify. Dr. Hahn coached him with role-play dolls and courtroom videos. Nolan bought a child-size suit jacket. They practiced breathing exercises nicknamed balloon belly. On the morning of the hearing, Ryan's anxiety spiked. He vomited in the courthouse bathroom. Nolan knelt, rubbing his back. "You only have to tell the truth," he reminded him. In the courtroom, Ryan's voice quavered but grew steady. "He twisted my arm because I spilled milk," he said, and the jurors flinched. He pointed to Melissa. "She told me if I screamed she'd lock me in the crawl space." Gasp. Defense attorney Ms. Blake tried every angle. "Isn't it possible you embellished to gain sympathy?" Ryan's fingers tightened around the witness stand rail. "Sympathy doesn't reset bones," he replied. "Numbers don't lie." He recited injury dates like multiplication tables. Closing arguments painted innocence violated versus misunderstood parenting. After deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Sentencing set for March, 15 years per count possible. Ryan leaned against Nolan's side, relieved but trembling. Bond hearing blindsided them. Greg's defense exploited a procedural appeal, winning temporary release under an ankle monitor. Their reprieve lasted 9 days. On a Thursday evening, Nolan returned from a curriculum meeting to find the apartment door ajar, a note on the table: "Truth has consequences." Ryan was gone. Detective Ramirez arrived. An Amber Alert flashed across billboards. Greg's tracker had been cut and attached to a stray dog. Ramirez notified the FBI. Ryan's abduction involved a rental minivan and forged documents. Greg and Melissa disguised him with a wig and oversized sweatshirt. They drove south, avoiding toll roads. At a countryside motel, Ryan noticed a service number for runaway support. He memorized the digit. At a Tennessee gas station, Greg forced Ryan to accompany him inside. Ryan swiped a plastic cocktail fork, stabbing Greg's thigh outside, then sprinted. An off-duty ranger tackled Greg. Deputies swarmed. Melissa surrendered. Ryan sat on a curb, rocking, plastic fork clutched like a talisman. "Please call Mr. Hervey," he pleaded. Nolan flew to Knoxville. At the sheriff's office, he pulled Ryan into a fierce embrace. "You amazing, brave kid," he whispered. Ryan pressed the fork into his palm. "I saved myself and you," he said. Greg now faced federal kidnapping charges. Bail became impossible. On the flight home, Ryan slept against Nolan's shoulder. Mid-air turbulence jolted him awake. Nolan stroked his hair, murmuring constellations until calm returned. The aftermath revealed damage both visible and buried. Ryan's nightmares intensified, so Dr. Hahn introduced EMDR and music therapy. She produced a battered ukulele, teaching 3 chords. Strumming softened Ryan's shoulders. He haltingly sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Nolan practiced too, fingers fumbling until laughter joined melody. In late July, before adoption finalization, Nolan and Ryan camped at Cedar Grove State Park. Beneath star-soaked skies, they roasted marshmallows and wrote equations with sparklers. A distant owl hooted. "Do you think the owl ever feels lonely?" Ryan asked. "Maybe, but owls talk across miles. Kind of like us sending hope," Nolan answered. Ryan nodded, ember light glowing on his grin. They slept in a nylon tent. When coyotes howled, Ryan woke, heart racing. Nolan taught a grounding trick. List 5 things you can hear, 4 you can touch, 3 you can see, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. By the time Ryan whispered, "charred marshmallow," his pulse slowed. Spring thawed the city. Cherry blossoms carpeted sidewalks when Nolan knelt before Ryan holding a slim envelope. "The adoption hearing is scheduled for May 15th, he said. Ryan's eyes widened. "For real? For real?" They celebrated with triple scoop ice cream. Ryan chose rainbow sherbet and allowed a grin that seemed to light the street. In court, Judge Morales's chambers smelled of old books and lemon polish. She asked Ryan, "Do you want Mr. Hervey as your legal parent?" "Yes." "He sees me," Ryan said. Papers were signed, photographs taken. Nolan felt the universe shift one crucial degree toward light. Friends crowded Nolan's living room. Ms. Whitaker brought cupcakes. Mr. Pope delivered a handmade wooden sign reading Hervey and Son, Infinite Possibilities. Ms. Langley toasted, To Cycles Broken. Laughter and clinking glasses filled spaces once haunted by silence. Later, Ryan assembled a Lego lunar base. Dad, he said, testing the word. Yeah, buddy? Can we paint the walls a different color? Something bright. We'll pick samples tomorrow, Nolan promised. Summer arrived with cicada choirs. Therapy sessions tapered. Basketball replaced EMDR tapping. Nolan taught geometry through building a treehouse in Ms. Whitaker's yard. Neighborhood kids joined. Ryan, once invisible, became architect of a fortress of laughter. One humid night lightning fractured the sky. Ryan startled. Thunder rolled like drums of a nightmare band. Nolan invited him to the balcony to count seconds between flash and rumble, translating distance in miles. They turned fear into math until storm became lesson. September brought middle school, new corridors, bigger lockers. Nolan walked him to the bus stop on the first day. Mr. Pope opened the door with a theatrical bow. Seat reserved for the bravest kid I know, he declared. Ryan climbed aboard, leaving sanctuary but carrying it within. That evening, after homework and hot cocoa, Ryan stood at the balcony rail beside Nolan, watching Orion rise above apartment rooftop. Next year I'll be 11, he mused, old enough to join the robotics club. Nolan draped an arm around his shoulders. And I'll be there in the front row of every competition, he promised. Ryan's grin was soft but certain. Beneath that sky, the future no longer loomed like a cavern. They saw it instead as open ground waiting for footprints they would make together, side by side, always. Thanks for listening till the end. If you enjoyed the story, please give the video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.